The story begins at a university in Thailand where a deadly zombie virus suddenly breaks out. At first, only a few people transform into zombies, rapidly attacking others and spreading the infection through bites. But with every passing minute, the situation worsens. More and more people turn, and chaos takes over. The number of zombies rises uncontrollably, leaving only a handful of survivors struggling desperately to stay alive. Amid the panic, the girl who first turned into a zombie attacks her classmate, San. He narrowly escapes, only to be ambushed by another zombie from behind. Acting quickly, San pushes it away, grabs a nearby iron rod, and strikes it down. As the creature dies, something unusual happens. Another zombie appears to mourn it. This moment hints at a strange emotional connection between the infected, suggesting they may not be entirely devoid of human feelings. After managing to survive, San and his group make their way into the science faculty building. Ning immediately plugs in her phone to charge and calls her professor, urgently asking him to take care of her mother. The professor, concerned, asks about Ning's brother Nan, but she explains that he isn't with them. Before he can say anything more, Ning abruptly hangs up. The noise has already begun to attract nearby zombies toward the lab. Confused by her sudden panic, the professor turns on the television. The news reveals that an emergency has been declared in Bangkok after a zombie outbreak spreads across the university. He then checks on Ning's mother and discovers that her condition is extremely critical. For a moment, he considers using an experimental antidote, but hesitates and ultimately decides not to administer it. Back at the university, Ning and her group escape through a lab window onto a balcony. From there, she spots her brother Nan and his group alive in a building across from them. Relieved, she calls out to him so they can coordinate an escape plan together. But suddenly, a zombie falls from above, startling everyone. Their screams echo through the area, drawing even more zombies toward them. The story then shifts to a few days earlier. A group of students is seen recording what appears to be zombie behavior, but it turns out to be staged, with a girl merely pretending to be infected. At the same time, we learn that Ning's mother has been seriously ill, unable to receive proper treatment due to a lack of money. Desperate, Ning approaches her professor for help, hoping he can find a cure. Instead, the professor offers her a deal: participate in his research. In return, she will earn money and potentially help discover a cure for her mother's illness. After discussing this, Ning returns home with San. There, San notices a sweater hanging in the house and suddenly experiences strange visions. He imagines a girl being brutally murdered. While he is still shaken by these visions, Ning's brother Nan arrives. Ning explains the professor's proposal to both of them, just as she receives another call from the professor asking for her final decision. The story then returns to the present. It is now evening, and the survivors remain trapped. One group stranded on the balcony, the other stuck in the stairwell. Moving all at once would create too much noise and attract the zombies, so they decide to escape in smaller groups. One group comes up with a plan. They will use a speaker to lure the zombies away with sound, then quietly slip past. They turn on a radio, blasting the news at full volume, and prepare to escape. But they overlook one critical detail: a zombie is still hiding in a nearby tree. Suddenly, it leaps down and attacks Nan's friend. As Nan rushes to help, the zombie bites his leg. After a fierce struggle, they manage to kill the creature. However, as they lift their injured friend and move away, fear settles in. He may already be infected. On the other side, the professor is seen finally injecting an antidote into Ning's mother, taking a risky step that could either save her or make things worse. Meanwhile, back inside the university, the survivors face a new and terrifying problem. Every facility has been shut down. There is no water, no electricity, and even the gas supply and mobile network have completely stopped working. Cut off from the outside world, they rely on a small radio to stay informed. Through it, they hear urgent news. Rescue helicopters will arrive at exactly 1:10 a.m. to evacuate any remaining survivors. Realizing this might be their only chance, Ning rushes to the university's control room. She manages to activate the PA system and makes an announcement across the campus, informing everyone that the rescue team will arrive at dawn and that all survivors must gather on the rooftop as soon as morning breaks. But before she can finish speaking, the generators suddenly fail, plunging everything back into silence and darkness. At the same moment, rain begins to fall. In a chilling sight, the zombies emerge and seem to react strangely to the rain, almost as if they are drawn to it, standing out in the open, soaking in it. Morning arrives, and two students attempt to make their way to the rooftop, hoping to reach safety. However, the sound of an approaching helicopter attracts a massive horde of zombies who immediately begin chasing them. Desperate to survive, the students climb into a nearby truck. Even then, the zombies continue to swarm around them. In a tense struggle, one of the boys manages to kick a zombie away, and they hide, one on top of the truck, the other underneath it. At that moment, they are certain they are going to die. But suddenly, gunfire echoes in the distance, drawing the zombies away and giving them a narrow chance to escape. The story then shifts back to the past, revealing more about Ning's family. Her younger brother shows clear jealousy toward San, especially over his new phone. He even accuses San of buying it with someone else's money. Ning quickly defends him, explaining that she bought the phone with her own savings. Their mother gently reassures them, promising that she will one day buy them both new phones. After leaving the house, Ning's mother heads out for work. It is revealed that she used to work as a food delivery worker. However, this time she doesn't go to her usual workplace. Instead, she meets a mysterious man and asks him for 2 or 3 of the latest phone models. The man smirks and asks if she is ready. Without hesitation, she agrees. A black cloth is then placed over her eyes, and she is taken to a hidden location inside a science laboratory. Once there, she enters a storeroom to change her clothes, but suddenly she hears someone screaming. Alarmed, she follows the sound and discovers a horrifying scene, a girl lying on the ground, bleeding heavily, while San stands nearby. This moment connects directly to the strange vision San experienced earlier. When Ning's mother calls out to him, he remains silent, as if frozen in place. But then, another friend named Joe suddenly appears and begins chasing her. As Ning's mother tries to escape, Joe collapses mid-chase. His body starts to change, his eyes shift unnaturally, and dark veins spread across his face, signaling that something is terribly wrong. As Joe's body begins to tremble violently, Ning's mother rushes to calm him, trying to steady his shaking form. But the situation quickly spirals out of control. Everyone turns their suspicion toward San, demanding to know what he did to Joe and the injured girl. The scene then shifts to a formal meeting. A man sits across from a powerful and influential businessman known as Grandpa, who is revealed to be the head of the entire operation. Their discussion centers on Joe, who, surprisingly, has begun to recover. Ning's mother explains that his condition was caused by a drug overdose. In a desperate attempt to stabilize him, she injected him with an experimental vaccine called Anasong. However, the vaccine was still incomplete, and no one knew what side effects it might cause. Because of this reckless decision, Ning's mother is immediately removed from the project. She is warned that even if Joe's condition improves, he will not be allowed to leave the lab. Instead, he will remain under strict observation so the researchers can monitor the long-term effects of the vaccine. As the other doctors leave the room, Joe's grandfather approaches Ning's mother and tells her that although the authorities have expelled her, he still wants her to remain part of the project, and he has the power to make that happen. Overwhelmed by pressure, guilt, and desperation, Ning's mother makes a shocking decision. She picks up the same experimental vaccine and injects it into her own body right in front of him. With a trembling voice, she declares that the vaccine is no longer just an experiment, it is now a reality within her. She continues, saying that whatever side effects the vaccine brings, she will endure them herself and find a way to cure them. But in return, she demands one promise. If she fails to discover an antidote, her children must not be harmed. And if she succeeds, she and her children must be allowed to leave the country and start a new life abroad. It is a desperate bargain made by a mother willing to risk everything. Later, she returns home, emotionally shattered, and breaks down in tears. Ning notices immediately and asks what happened. But her mother hides the truth, forcing a smile as she claims she simply had a disagreement with staff at the hotel. The story then returns to the present at the university. Nan spots a group of zombies passing quietly near their room and begins recording them on his camera. The other survivors gather around to watch. At that moment, San notices the temperature. It is now 25 degrees Celsius. This observation leads him to a realization. San explains that these are not ordinary zombies. There is something unusual about them that they still don't fully understand. Earlier in the morning, when the temperature was around 31 degrees Celsius, the zombies were aggressive and uncontrollable. But now, in cooler conditions, they seem calmer and less chaotic. Even more disturbing is the fact that their emotional connections appear to remain intact. He reminds them of how their classmate Jane, even after turning into a zombie, seemed to mourn the death of the first infected. This revelation forces everyone to rethink what they are dealing with. These creatures are not just mindless monsters, they may still retain fragments of their humanity. As night falls, the group struggles to endure the darkness, knowing that their only chance of survival is to reach the rooftop by morning. Preparing for what lies ahead, they head to the cleaning sector and gather as many tools as they can, anything that could serve as a weapon. Deep down, they know that before they reach safety, they may have no choice but to fight their way through the undead. As the survivors begin climbing upward, they notice something deeply unsettling. With the arrival of morning, all the infected, those who had turned into zombies, seem to return to their normal routines. The cleaners resume sweeping the floors, the librarian calmly arranges books, and students sit quietly as if studying. It becomes clear that, despite their transformation, their minds are still functioning in some way. Carefully, the group tries to sneak out of the library without drawing attention, but suddenly, a girl's phone rings, breaking the silence. The sound immediately attracts nearby zombies. Panic erupts. The girl tries to run, but a zombie catches her, bites her leg, and then, as she struggles, rises and bites her neck, sealing her fate. Her friends rush to save her, while the rest of the group continues moving forward. But when they realize two of their friends have been left behind, they turn back to help. By the time they return, it's too late. One of the girls has already been overwhelmed by multiple zombies, and the other has turned, now chasing them as one of the infected. They flee up the stairs, pursued not only by their former friend, but by a growing number of zombies. Armed with whatever tools they manage to gather, they fight back desperately, striking and pushing their way through the chaos. Meanwhile, Ning and her group manage to reach the rooftop. In the distance, they spot a helicopter approaching. Hope sparks instantly, and they begin waving frantically to get its attention. But at that exact moment, Ning remembers her younger brother, Nan. Without hesitation, she turns back and runs down the staircase to find him. Elsewhere, the two boys who had earlier hidden in the truck are now being chased by one of their zombified companions. With no other option, they leap into a swimming pool to escape. The zombie follows them into the water. Holding their breath for as long as they can, the boys remain submerged until the zombie eventually goes limp and sinks, allowing them to survive. Back on the rooftop, more survivors arrive through another staircase, the very one Ning had been searching for. But their brief moment of relief is shattered when a zombie suddenly spots Ning. As she tries to escape, she sees an entire horde rushing up the stairs toward them. Realizing the danger, Ning understands that the zombies will soon overwhelm everyone on the rooftop. She urgently warns the group, and they immediately begin retreating down another staircase. Just as they descend, the zombies flood onto the rooftop. At the same time, the helicopter arrives and begins firing at the infected. But confusion spreads among the survivors. They don't know whether the people in the helicopter are truly there to rescue them or to eliminate everything, including them. In the chaos, Pao is suddenly attacked by a zombified friend. Covered in blood, he is immediately suspected of being infected. Some members of the group insist he should be expelled to protect the others. However, Pad's brother and close friends defend him, explaining that the blood is not his and that he hasn't been bitten. The group continues moving, but soon they encounter another of their zombified friends approaching from the opposite direction. Strangely, Pao feels an emotional pull toward the zombie, as if a connection still exists between them. This only deepens the group's suspicion that something might be wrong with him. Just as Pao begins to step closer, an axe suddenly flies through the air from behind and strikes the zombie in the head, killing it instantly. It is then revealed that another group of survivors has arrived. Now the two groups unite, increasing their chances of survival. The story then shifts back to the past, 4 months earlier, when Ning first began, working with the professor in his laboratory. After finishing her tasks one day, she carefully stores her experiment samples in a freezer and sends the professor a message before leaving. Later, she meets him in person, her worry impossible to hide. She asks him directly when he plans to treat her mother and when he will finally find a cure for her illness. Her mother's condition is worsening with each passing day, and they have nothing left to help her. The professor listens calmly and reassures her that they will find a solution soon, but whether that promise can be trusted remains uncertain. Ning faces another moral conflict. She cannot accept the idea of using human beings as test subjects, but the professor dismisses her concerns, telling her to simply do the work assigned to her. According to him, it is up to higher authorities to decide whether experiments should be conducted on animals or humans. Soon after Ning leaves, the same man who once brought her mother into the lab enters the professor's office. He delivers alarming news. Joe's condition is rapidly deteriorating, and they must find an antidote immediately. Otherwise, powerful figures like Grandpa and his associates will not only destroy them, but also bring down their entire company. Furious, the man gives the professor a strict ultimatum. He has only 3 days to complete the task. From that moment on, he is forbidden from seeking Ning's help. He must handle everything alone. The story then shifts back to the present. The survivors, exhausted and desperate, gather in the university gym to eat and drink whatever they can find. But even after regaining some strength, a harsh reality weighs heavily on them. They now believe the military has no intention of rescuing them. They have seen enough to understand that if they want to survive, they must rely entirely on themselves. At the same time, the professor continues his research. While going through old materials, he discovers the work of another scientist, filled with detailed studies and images of jellyfish. Intrigued, he dives deeper into the research and uncovers something astonishing. Certain species of jellyfish possess a form of biological immortality, meaning they can, essentially, avoid death. Realizing the potential, he quickly orders jellyfish specimens from the same man who had threatened him, hoping they might hold the key to completing his experiment. Back at the university, the survivors are once again discussing their escape when San shows them footage he recorded of the zombies. As they watch closely, they notice something strange. All the zombies are moving in the same direction, as if guided by an unseen force. This leads them to a shocking conclusion. There must be a leader controlling them, perhaps a queen zombie, similar to how bees or insects follow a single ruler. If they can find and eliminate this leader, they might be able to stop or even control the entire horde. The story then flashes back a few days earlier. The professor approaches an elderly woman who works at the university and makes her an extraordinary offer. He claims he can stop her aging and cure all the illnesses that come with it, all through a single injection. However, there is one strict condition. Once she receives it, she must never go to another doctor and must rely solely on him. At first, the woman hesitates, but when he offers her a large sum of money, she agrees. It is revealed that she is not the only one. Several others have also been convinced to participate in this secret experiment. That same night, as the professor secretly escorts these individuals into his lab, a boy named Jin witnesses everything. In the present timeline, Jin reflects on what he saw and begins to piece together the truth. The zombie outbreak may have originated from the professor's experiment that night. Determined to take action, some of the survivors decide they can no longer sit idle. They form a plan to identify the zombie leader. A group of boys, including Nan, despite Ning's objections, venture out to observe the zombies more closely. From outside an auditorium, they secretly film the infected inside. What they discover confirms their theory. All the zombies are following the old woman. Even the smallest gesture she makes is mirrored by the entire group. Jin immediately recognizes her as the same woman he saw with the professor and realizes she must be the leader they are searching for. Meanwhile, tension grows within the survivor group itself. Pao, who had earlier been suspected of being infected, suddenly attacks one of his friends. Chaos erupts as the others struggle to pull him away. His brother, embarrassed and desperate, insists that Pao is not infected, that his mental state has simply begun to collapse under the pressure. Seeing how unstable he has become, the group decides to lock Pao in a separate room for everyone's safety, while the injured boy is taken elsewhere. However, one girl feels sympathy for him. When she tries to free him, Pao reveals something disturbing. He tells her that zombies are better than humans. At least they stay united, while humans are divided and selfish. He admits that he no longer likes human behavior and has decided that he wants to become a zombie himself. Hearing this, the girl is shaken. In that moment, she realizes that Jin was right. Pao is no longer thinking rationally. His mind is breaking, and he is slowly losing himself to the madness surrounding them. After hearing Pad's disturbing words, the girl, shaken and afraid, quietly leaves him behind. Not long after, Jin and the rest of the group return, only to discover a horrifying scene. The boy Pao had attacked is now lying on the ground with an axe lodged in his head, clearly struck by Pao. His body begins to twitch, slowly transforming into a zombie. Panic spreads instantly among the survivors. One of the boys, armed with a gun, steps forward and shoots the infected boy, ending his life before he can fully turn. With fear and anger building, the group sets out to find Pao. They soon discover him inside the auditorium, shouting wildly at the zombies, begging them to come and bite him. He wants to become one of them. Hearing his desperate cries, the group rushes in to stop him, but tension erupts when one of the boys, who no longer trusts Pao, tries to shoot him. The others intervene just in time, saving Pao from being killed. However, the commotion draws the attention of nearby zombies. Within moments, a swarm begins closing in on them. The group scatters, running for cover. Only the boy with the gun stays behind, bravely facing the oncoming horde. One by one, he shoots the zombies, holding them back as long as he can. But his bullets quickly run out. Surrounded and with no way out, he is left completely vulnerable. Seeing this, Ning and San rush to help him. The boy switches to another weapon and continues fighting, desperately trying to survive. But the number of zombies is overwhelming, and soon he begins to lose ground. In that critical moment, San makes a bold and emotional decision. Instead of escaping, he stays behind and fights alongside him. Together, they manage to kill the remaining zombies and save his life. Ning, however, is furious. She shouts at them, warning that this is not the time for emotional decisions. Every choice must be made with survival in mind. Without wasting another second, she orders everyone to follow her and leads the group back into the university lab. Inside, tensions remain high. The boy who had earlier tried to kill Pao is still filled with anger. Ning quietly notices something alarming. A zombie has bitten him on the shoulder. He is likely infected, though she says nothing at first. The boy, consumed by rage, lashes out. He blames everyone for what happened, insisting that Pao should have been restrained earlier and that San's emotional choice has cost them lives. In a sudden and shocking turn, he pulls out a second gun and fires multiple shots into San's head. Then, without hesitation, he shoots Pao as well. Finally, he turns the gun on himself and takes his own life. The entire tragedy unfolds in seconds, too quickly for anyone to react. The room falls silent. Ning stands frozen in shock, unable to process what just happened. Dan collapses into tears, mourning the loss of his friends. Ning sits beside him, trying to comfort him as best as she can. As Dan struggles with grief, a memory suddenly resurfaces. He recalls that San once told him about Ning working with the professor on a secret experiment. They were trying to create a medicine to cure her mother. As the pieces begin to connect, Dan remembers something else. Just days earlier, he had seen several poor university staff members gathered outside the professor's office, including the same old woman they now believe to be the leader of the zombies. The realization strikes him hard. This entire outbreak may be the result of the professor's experiment. The story then shifts back to the past, revealing the truth. The professor had developed a treatment using a special type of jellyfish, hoping to cure Ning's mother. But no one could have predicted that such a small organism would lead to such devastating consequences. Under immense pressure from his powerful backers, the professor rushed his work. He skipped proper testing on animals like rats or monkeys and instead moved directly to human trials. He instructed everyone who received the vaccine to report any symptoms immediately. At first, everything seemed normal, but within days the participants began to feel worse. They experienced dizziness, hallucinations, and a growing sense of unease. Eventually, the symptoms became unbearable. The old woman was among the first to show severe signs. One day she noticed a strange, sticky substance leaking from her body. Alarmed, she rushed to the professor for help. He examined her and realized something was terribly wrong. When she asked what was happening to her, he could only respond that he needed to run blood tests. When the results finally came back, the professor was horrified. Her blood was filled with countless parasites, something that should never exist in a human body. and in that moment, he realized the full extent of the disaster he had created. Just as the professor is lost in thought, trying to understand the horrifying discovery, he receives an email regarding the jellyfish he had ordered for his experiment. Some of them, it turns out, were infected. In that moment, everything becomes clear. The parasites found in the human bodies had actually originated from those jellyfish. Through the vaccine, they had entered the human system and begun multiplying uncontrollably. The realization shocks the professor to his core. The story then returns to the present. Ning sits inside the lab, carefully reading through the professor's research notes. As she studies them, she learns something extraordinary. Jellyfish possess the ability to regenerate themselves and, in some cases, achieve a form of biological immortality. They can heal, survive extreme conditions, and even avoid death. This was the very reason the professor chose them for his experiment, but his fatal mistake was failing to check whether the jellyfish themselves carried any hidden infections. Realizing this, Ning is filled with regret. As she discusses everything with Dan, a new idea forms in her mind. If she can find the exact formula of the vaccine, she believes she might be able to fix everything, perhaps even create an antidote using the correct type of jellyfish. But there's a problem. The professor had written the formula in his personal diary and locked it away in a secure safe, the password of which is unknown to them. During their conversation, they notice a USB flash drive lying nearby. Dan suggests that it might contain useful information, perhaps a clue about the vaccine or even a way to open the safe. But to access it, they need a computer, which means leaving the safety of the lab. At that moment, a new danger emerges. San, their friend whom they had left behind, is no longer human. He has returned as a zombie. The situation becomes critical. Thinking quickly, Ning remembers the gun that had been used earlier. Dan comes up with a plan. He will distract San while Ning retrieves the weapon. She agrees. Dan lures San away, giving Ning a chance to grab the gun, but her hands tremble with fear, and she accidentally drops it, making noise that draws San's attention toward her. Just as he is about to attack, Dan rushes in from behind and strikes him, holding him back. In that terrifying moment, Ning overcomes her fear. Gathering all her strength, she takes action and ends her friend San, putting him to rest. It is a painful but necessary decision. Afterward, they return to the lab, shaken but determined, and clean the blood from their bodies. Meanwhile, the remaining survivors manage to escape the zombies and regroup in the gymnasium. They are devastated by the loss of many of their friends and have no idea what has happened to Ning and Dan. Now, a crucial question divides them. Should they fight the zombies or try to eliminate them completely? They begin analyzing the videos they had recorded earlier, searching for answers. Nan notices something unusual. When one of their companions was bitten, he didn't just turn, he seemed to develop an emotional connection with the zombie that bit him, almost like a child to a parent. This observation leads them to a theory. When a zombie bites someone, that person becomes its descendant, forming a bond similar to that between a parent and child, or even a teacher and student. The infection isn't just physical, it creates a strange emotional hierarchy. They also notice another key detail. Among all the zombies, the cleaning lady is the only one moving freely and independently. Others seem to follow her, as if obeying a chain of command. It becomes clear that those she infected are directly connected to her, and in turn, they pass that connection on to others. All of them are part of a larger organized network, with her at the center. Despite forming these theories, one mystery remains. How did the cleaning lady become the first zombie? She is clearly the origin of this chain of infection, yet her own transformation remains unexplained. Just then, one of the boys recalls that the cleaning lady used to work in the natural sciences faculty, the same place where Ning conducted her experiments. This realization begins to connect the final pieces of the puzzle. However, another boy interrupts, arguing that understanding the origin is no longer important. What truly matters now is how to stop her. A girl in the group suggests a bold idea. If they eliminate the cleaning lady, the queen, it might bring an end to all the other zombies, just like destroying the queen of a hive causes the rest to collapse. But not everyone agrees. Another boy raises a serious concern. What if killing her doesn't stop them? What if instead it makes the zombies even more aggressive? The uncertainty leaves the group divided, standing at the edge of a dangerous decision that could either save them or doom them all. The group carefully considers their next move. One of the girls speaks up with a new idea. She points out that these zombies still share emotional connections, much like humans do. Because of this, she suggests that instead of killing the old woman, the one they believe to be the leader, they should capture her. If they hold her hostage, the other zombies might not harm them. The group finds this plan more promising than simply trying to eliminate her. Now the question becomes how to capture her. One of the boys explains that the zombies seem to follow a daily routine, almost like normal humans. In the morning, the old woman goes to work in the science faculty. That, he says, will be their best chance to catch her. The group agrees and appoints a boy named Fu as their leader. Fu decides that they will lure her into a room inside the science faculty, believing it to be the safest and most controlled approach. Meanwhile, Ning finally manages to access the USB drive using a computer. Inside it, she discovers a recorded video of the professor explaining everything. He reveals that the entire disaster began with a project called Anasong, a research initiative he had worked on alongside Ning's mother, who, it turns out, was an exceptionally talented scientist. The professor explains that a major mistake occurred during the Anasong project. Although the error was actually caused by another colleague, Ning's mother took full responsibility. She did this to protect a secret, her relationship with the professor. At the time, she was already divorced and had a daughter, and any scandal would have destroyed her reputation. Because of this sacrifice, she lost both her career and her place in the research world. After leaving the company and the professor, she later discovered that she was pregnant. Even then, she chose to raise her children alone, refusing to rekindle any relationship with him. Unable to find work in research due to the blame she had taken, she was forced to survive by working as a waitress and a delivery worker. Years passed this way, as Ning and her brother Nan grew up. Then one day, Professor Roy approached her with an offer. A powerful man known as Grandpa had established a secret research lab and needed her expertise for an important project. At first, she refused. She had long left that world behind, but Roy assured her that the work would remain completely confidential and that she would be paid a large sum of money, enough to solve all her financial struggles. Eventually, she accepted. When she joined the lab, she discovered something shocking. The project was none other than Anasong, the very research she had once abandoned. The goal this time was even more ambitious, to create a medicine capable of reactivating dead cells. They even aimed to push the project further, to the point of potentially reviving human beings. Grandpa, who was overseeing the project, had his own motives. He didn't necessarily want immortality in the traditional sense. Instead, he wanted to preserve his body and legacy so that even after death, he would remain unchanged and unforgettable. His cells still active, his body untouched by decay. With no other choice, Ning's mother began working on the project. One day, while she arrived at the lab, she found Joe, Grandpa's grandson, partying there with his friends. Because of his status, she couldn't interfere, so she quietly went to change her clothes. Meanwhile, Joe, intoxicated and reckless, entered the lab with his friends and began harassing Ning's mother's assistant. At that moment, the assistant was preparing to test the experimental vaccine on a rat. But in a moment of panic, trying to protect herself, she injected the vaccine directly into Joe's neck. The effects were immediate. Joe began to feel strange changes in his body and demanded to know what had been done to him. When the assistant couldn't answer, paralyzed by fear, Joe lashed out in rage, grabbing a nearby object and striking her fatally. San was also present at the time and tried to stop Joe, but it was too late. Hearing the chaos, Ning's mother rushed in and saw everything unfold. Though the assistant was given first aid, she could not be saved. At the same time, Joe's body began showing severe and abnormal symptoms. The side effects of the incomplete serum had already begun to take hold. Since Ning's mother was leading the project, the blame once again fell on her. The authorities immediately removed her from the Anasong project. However, Joe's grandfather stepped in and forced her into a new role. She was now responsible for creating an antidote to save his grandson. Refusing was not an option. Knowing she had created the serum herself, Ning's mother made a drastic decision. She injected the same serum into her own body, vowing that she would find a cure, not only for Joe, but for herself as well. She accepted that she would suffer the same side effects, but remained determined to overcome them. Days passed, but despite all her efforts, she was unable to create an antidote. Finally, Joe's grandfather told her about the professor and insisted that she seek his help. Haunted by her past, she struggled with the decision, but knew she had no time for hesitation. When she finally met the professor again, she revealed a shocking truth. Nan was his son. Then, putting everything aside, she explained her desperate situation and asked for his help in creating a cure. The professor ultimately agrees to help Ning's mother. However, because she had hidden a major truth from him in the past, he refuses to rebuild any personal connection with her. Instead, he chooses to involve Ning in the research. At the same time, he makes one thing absolutely clear: any decision to create an antidote using jellyfish was entirely his own. Ning had no part in it. If anything goes wrong, if there are side effects or disastrous consequences, he alone will bear the responsibility. He openly admits his mistake. In his desperation, he had tested the antidote on human subjects without proper caution. But now, he claims to have corrected that error. He has developed a new antidote using bacteria-free jellyfish serum, one that, according to him, can cure both Ning's mother and Joe. When Ning hears this revelation, she is overwhelmed with emotion. Rage and despair consume her. In a moment of anger, she even smashes the computer. Dan quickly steps in to calm her down. Determined, Ning rushes to the freezer and retrieves the antidote the professor had prepared. This could finally save her mother, but she hesitates, uncertain about what she should do next. Meanwhile, another group of survivors begins putting their plan into action. They enter the natural sciences faculty, preparing to capture the zombie leader, the old cleaning lady. As they spread out across the department, they carry red and green cloths to silently signal one another. Suddenly, a heavy thumping sound echoes through the hallways. The leader has arrived early that morning. The group immediately springs into action, setting traps and preparing to capture her. The story then flashes back to the moment when everything first fell apart. On that fateful day, the temperature had risen to an unbearable 51 degrees Celsius. A guard standing outside collapsed from the heat. At the same time, the old woman, the first to receive the serum, noticed a large blood-filled swelling forming on her body. Without warning, it burst, spraying blood everywhere. Her veins turned blue, her eyes became clouded, and within seconds, she transformed into a terrifying zombie. Soon after, others who had received the serum began to suffer the same fate. Within minutes, they too transformed into zombies, driven by pain and rage. The first infected immediately attacked those around them, and the infection spread rapidly across the university. Chaos erupted everywhere, and in no time the number of zombies exceeded the number of humans. Returning to the present, the cleaning lady is seen making her way toward the lab. At the same time, Ning and Dan are also heading out. Ning recalls the last time she interacted with this woman and begins to wonder, could there still be a trace of humanity left inside her? She attempts to approach and communicate with the zombie, but the woman simply stares back with empty, lifeless eyes. Seeing that the plan is failing, Nan takes matters into his own hands. He raises his voice, trying to lure the zombie into the trap they had prepared. The moment Ning hears her brother, she panics and runs toward him, but before she can reach him, the zombie falls directly into the trap inside the room. The group quickly seizes the opportunity. They grab the zombie by her legs and drag her inside. For a brief moment, it seems like their plan to capture her alive has succeeded, but then everything falls apart. Dan suddenly steps forward, presses a cushion over the zombie's face, and fires multiple bullets into her head, killing her instantly. The entire group is devastated. They had spent the entire night planning to capture her alive, believing she was the key to controlling the outbreak. And in a single impulsive act, Dan has destroyed that hope. The scene abruptly shifts to the professor, who is with Ning's mother. He injects her with the antidote he created, but before its effects can fully be observed, armed men sent by Joe's father arrive. They take both Ning's mother and the professor to a secret facility. As they are transported, the professor looks out and sees his university being burned by the government. The sight breaks him. He knows that everything happening, the deaths, the destruction, is the result of his own actions. At the facility, Joe confronts the professor in anger, accusing him of failing to conduct proper research. But then, tests reveal something remarkable. Ning's mother is recovering rapidly. The antidote is working. Seeing this, Joe's father immediately orders that the antidote be given to his son as well. However, the professor explains a critical limitation. He only managed to create 2 doses. One has already been used on Ning's mother, and the second is still inside the university. In that tense moment, the professor finally speaks the truth. He tells the man that the zombie outbreak is not just an accident, it is the direct result of their own experiments. He is filled with regret, but the man standing before him shows no emotion at all. Before leaving, the man coldly states that as long as the truth about the outbreak remains hidden, they are safe. What matters now is retrieving the remaining antidote. Without wasting time, he sends the professor back to the university by helicopter. The professor agrees, but only on one condition. He will take 2 people with him. And surprisingly, the man accepts. Inside the university, the survivors are once again trapped in fear and uncertainty, trying to figure out how they can both escape and fight back against the zombies. At that moment, the girl who has been carefully observing the zombies' behavior makes an important realization. She points out that another zombie is knocking at the door, one that appears to be part of the second generation, directly created by the old lady. According to her, if they can control this type of zombie, they might be able to control the entire horde. After understanding this, Ning makes a shocking and emotional decision. She decides to infect herself using the old lady's blood, believing that by doing so, she will gain control over the other zombies. Dan is horrified and immediately tries to stop her, telling her that she is acting irrationally and that this is not the time for emotional decisions. But Ning refuses to listen. As she prepares to inject the blood into her body, Dan lashes out, accusing her of being just like her mother, running away from the problem instead of solving it. Still determined, Ning ignores him. In desperation, Dan pulls out a gun and points it at her brother, Nan, trying to force her to stop. But Ning calmly responds that she knows he won't shoot. Their argument is suddenly cut short when the door behind them bursts open and a massive horde of zombies floods in. These were once students, but now they charge forward relentlessly. Fighting them is nearly impossible, and even escaping becomes a struggle. The group begins running upstairs in a desperate attempt to survive. Dan, however, chooses to stay behind. Armed with a gun and experienced in fighting zombies, he sacrifices himself to hold them off, giving the others a chance to escape. Despite his bravery, no one can stop to help him. They are all focused on survival. The remaining survivors finally reach the top and struggle to seal the stairwell, using all their strength to keep the zombies from breaking through. In the middle of this chaos, they hear the sound of a helicopter approaching, the same one carrying the professor. When Ning sees him, hope surges through her. She excitedly raises the tube of serum, showing him the antidote. The professor, relieved, realizes that retrieving it may now be easier than he expected. Without hesitation, he orders the helicopter to land. As soon as it touches down, Ning and 2 other girls rush toward it. The guards quickly pull Ning into the helicopter, but then, shockingly, they push the other girls away. In that instant, Ning realizes the truth. They were never here to rescue everyone. The professor then calls out loudly for Nan. Seeing the helicopter, Nan understands that this is his chance to escape. He tells Ning not to hesitate, urging her to save herself and leave. For a moment, he steps forward, considering it, but then, a painful thought stops him, the idea of abandoning his friends, who are still fighting and dying below. He cannot bring himself to leave them behind. Even as Ning calls out desperately for him to come, Nan remains where he is. Nearby, a girl who has always harbored jealousy toward Ning and Nan watches everything unfold. Realizing that the professor has come only to save them, she becomes consumed with anger. In a moment of rage, she takes the syringe filled with the old lady's blood, the one Ning had prepared, and injects it directly into Nan's throat. Instantly, he is infected with the zombie virus. Ning watches in horror, completely devastated. At the same time, the professor wastes no time. He orders the helicopter to take off, abandoning everyone else. Back inside, the remaining survivors finally manage to secure the upper door, stopping the zombies from reaching them. The story then jumps forward 1 month later. We see that Joe has mostly recovered, though he has not yet regained consciousness. Ning's mother shows similar progress. During a quiet moment, she suddenly wakes up, but something is wrong. One of her eyes is enlarged and glowing blue, hinting that the antidote has caused unexpected side effects. The scene then returns to the university 1 month after the outbreak. Nan is now shown tied up with ropes. He is fully transformed into a second-generation zombie, but through him, the survivors have discovered a way to control the others. Using this connection, they have managed to manipulate the zombie horde and, against all odds, ensure their survival. And with that, the drama comes to an end. Subscribe for more videos like this one, tap the bell icon to get the update, and don't forget to like the video. Thanks for watching.